Disclaimer: watch at your own risk. Today, we descend into stories so haunting that even death could not silence the victims. These are the cases where the dead themselves pointed to their killers. If you survived the journey, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support fuels the next dive into darkness. The summer sun beat down on the Gahanna gas station that August afternoon in 2015. Its heat, nothing compared to the fire that would soon engulf Judy Malinowski's life. She stood in the parking lot near Agler and Steigler Roads, her heart pounding as she faced her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Michael Slager. Their relationship had been a storm of control and chaos, marked by his manipulation and her struggle to break free. Judy, a 31-year-old mother of two daughters, Kaylin and Madison, had fought hard to reclaim her life. A cancer survivor, she'd battled ovarian cancer and the opioid addiction that followed, clawing her way to sobriety by early 2015. But Michael, with his tattooed arms and a criminal record that stretched back years, had drawn her back into a dark orbit. He'd fed her heroin, preying on her vulnerabilities, and when she tried to leave, he refused to let go. That day, their argument escalated fast. Judy, fed up, threw a soda at him, the liquid splashing across his shirt. His eyes darkened, a cold fury taking hold. He didn't yell back. Instead, he walked to his black truck, grabbed a can of gasoline, and returned with purpose. "See what I'll do to you," he said, his voice low and venomous as he poured the liquid over her head. It ran down her face, burning her throat, soaking her clothes. She begged him to stop, her voice trembling, but he stepped back, pulled a lighter from his pocket, and flicked it. Flames roared to life, swallowing her in a blaze that felt like 1,000 hot needles piercing her skin. Judy screamed, her body a living torch as she stumbled behind the Speedway gas station. The pain was unimaginable, searing through every nerve. A nearby Marine, hearing her cries, rushed to the scene, tackling Michael as he tried to flee. Security cameras captured it all. His truck pulling up, the argument, the gasoline, the moment he lit her on fire. Judy collapsed, her body charred, her ears and fingers melting away, 90% of her skin reduced to raw muscle and ligament. Paramedics arrived, their faces grim as they worked to stabilize her. At Ohio State University's Wexner Medical Center, doctors gave her hours to live. They revived her 7 times that first night, each attempt a battle against the odds. Her mother, Bonnie Bowes, rushed to her side, staring in horror at her daughter's unrecognizable form. Judy's blonde hair was gone, her vibrant smile replaced by bandages and tubes. Bonnie held her hand, whispering prayers, refusing to let go. Judy's daughters, just 13 and 10, were told their mother had been hurt by a bad man, but the truth was too horrific to fully share. Against all expectations, Judy survived. Days turned to weeks, then months, in the burn unit. She endured over 60 surgeries, skin grafts, debridements, procedures that left her screaming through the pain of twice daily dressing changes. She spent 8 months in a coma, her body fighting infections that antibiotics barely held at bay. When she woke, she could barely speak, her throat scarred, her voice a whisper, but her spirit burned fierce. She'd always been a fighter, a former homecoming queen who made friends effortlessly, who loved her girls more than anything. Now, confined to a hospital bed, she found a new purpose: justice. Michael had taken a plea deal in December 2016, entering an Alford plea for aggravated arson and felonious assault. He didn't admit guilt but acknowledged the evidence, security footage, witness accounts would likely convict him. The judge sentenced him to 11 years, the maximum for those charges. But Judy knew it wasn't enough. She'd heard the doctor's prognosis. She wouldn't survive. If she died, Michael could face murder charges, and she was determined to make sure her story was heard. By January 2017, Judy's condition was fragile, her body ravaged by infections and the toll of 59 surgeries. Prosecutors, led by Ron O'Brien, knew they had to act fast. They arranged a deposition, a rare move to preserve her testimony under oath. Judy, aware of her fading strength, agreed. She weaned herself off pain medication to prove she was lucid, each moment of clarity bought with excruciating pain. From her hospital bed, surrounded by beeping monitors and sterile white walls, she faced a video camera. Her lawyer asked questions first, guiding her through the events of that August day. She described Michael's words, his cold deliberation as he doused her with gasoline, the way he backed away for 30 seconds, ignoring her pleas, before lighting the flame. The look on his face was pure evil, she said, her voice strained but steady. Then came the cross-examination. Michael's attorney, Mark Collins, pressed her, probing for inconsistencies, questioning her memory through the fog of trauma and medication. Judy held firm, her answers unwavering. She had no cigarettes that day, she said, debunking Michael's claim that he'd accidentally set her on fire while lighting one for her. The deposition lasted 3 hours, 2/3 of it grueling cross-examination. Judy's mother watched, her heart breaking but swelling with pride. She spoke up, not just for herself, but for other women. Bonnie later said, Judy's fight didn't end with the deposition. She pushed for change, working with her family and former state representative Jim Hughes to advocate for tougher law. Her efforts led to Judy's Law, signed by Ohio Governor John Kasich in September 2017, which added 6 years to sentences for crimes using accelerants that cause permanent disfigurement. Judy's 13-year-old daughter, Kaylin, testified before the Ohio Senate, her voice trembling as she spoke of her mother's suffering and their shared loss. My mom, my sister, and I all got a life sentence, she said. Judy, too weak to attend, watched from her hospital bed, her heart full despite the pain. She died on June 27, 2017, 696 days after the attack, her hand in Bonnie's, her mother whispering, I'll hold your hand until Jesus takes the other. 10 seconds later, Judy was gone. The Franklin County courtroom was silent in July 2018 when Judy's deposition was played. Michael Slager, now 42, sat flanked by his lawyers, his face unreadable. The jury watched the grainy video, Judy's frail form filling the screen, her voice cutting through the stillness. She recounted the attack in chilling detail. Michael's taunts, the gasoline burning her throat, the moment he lit the lighter. The security footage corroborated her words, showing his deliberate action. Prosecutors, led by O'Brien, presented additional evidence, witness statements, medical reports, and the testimony of the Marine who'd stopped Michael from fleeing. Assistant Prosecutor Warren Edwards called it a case so ripe for the death penalty, but Judy had made her wishes clear. In her deposition, she'd asked for leniency, saying Michael didn't deserve death, but should spend his life in prison. She wasn't vengeful, Bonnie said. She hoped he'd find God. At the last minute, Michael changed his plea to guilty of aggravated murder. avoiding a full trial. On July 5, 2018, Judge Guy Reese sentenced him to life without parole, calling Judy's compassion greater than Michael's cruelty. The ruling was historic. Judy became one of the first victims in U.S. history to testify at her own murder trial, her voice reaching from beyond the grave to secure justice. Bonnie carried on Judy's legacy, founding Judy's Foundation to combat domestic violence and push for Judy's law nationwide. The documentary, The Fire That Took Her, released in 2022, brought Judy's story to a wider audience. Its raw footage of her testimony and the attack leaving viewers in tears. Director Patricia Gillespie called Judy a symbol of resilience, a woman who refused to be silenced. The case exposed flaws in the system, Michael's prior convictions, the police's failure to act when Judy reported his abuse, the initial 11-year sentence that felt like a slap on the wrist. Judy's courage changed that, not just for herself, but for countless others. Her deposition, played in that Ohio courtroom, became her silent scream, a beacon of truth that brought her killer to justice. As this sorrow blankets Gahanna's quiet streets, another story of bravery unfolds in a distant corner. The night was cold in Monticello, Arkansas. That September evening in 1977, the kind of chill that crept into the bones of a small town where everyone thought they knew each other's secrets. Inside the modest Jones home on South Pine Street, 4-year-old Heidi Jones pressed her eye against a tiny peephole in her bedroom door, her small hands trembling as she watched a nightmare unfold. Her mother, Loretta Jones, was in the living room, her voice rising in a desperate plea. Loretta, a 34-year-old single mother, had been trying to rebuild her life after a string of hardships. She worked long hours as a nurse's aide, her days filled with caring for others while she poured her heart into raising Heidi. But that night, Tom Brown, a man Loretta had been seeing, was in their home, his presence heavy with menace. Heidi didn't know why he was there so late or why her mother sounded so scared, but she couldn't look away. Through the peephole, she saw Tom's shadow loom over Loretta, his movements sharp and angry. Then came the sound, a sickening thud, followed by Loretta's scream, cut short as she fell to the floor. Heidi's heart raced, her breath catching in her throat as she watched Tom strike her mother again and again, a knife glinting in his hand. Loretta's body crumpled, blood pooling beneath her, staining the worn carpet. Heidi froze, too terrified to move, her tiny body pressed against the door as Tom stood over her mother, his chest heaving before he slipped out into the night. Heidi didn't sleep that night. She stayed by the peephole, her eyes burning with tears, waiting for her mother to get up. But Loretta never did. When morning came, Heidi crept out of her room, her bare feet stepping carefully around the blood that had spread across the floor. She ran to a neighbor's house, her voice small but clear. "Tom hurt my mama," she said, her words spilling out in a rush. "He hit her, and she's not moving." The neighbor, stunned, called the police, and soon the Jones home was filled with officers, their radios crackling as they surveyed the grisly scene. Loretta lay lifeless, her body bearing the marks of a brutal attack, stab wounds, bruises, and a crushed skull from blunt force trauma. The medical examiner later counted 22 wounds, a testament to the savagery of her death. Heidi, barely tall enough to reach the kitchen counter, sat with a detective, her wide eyes fixed on him as she repeated what she saw. "Tom did it," she said, her voice unwavering despite her fear. "I saw him through the hole in my door." The detective nodded, jotting down her words, but his face betrayed doubt. She was only 4, too young, they thought, to be a reliable witness. The police turned their attention elsewhere, chasing leads that led nowhere, dismissing Heidi's account as the confused memory of a traumatized child. What they didn't know then, what they wouldn't know for decades, was that Loretta had left a message of her own. As she lay dying, her strength fading, she dipped her fingers in her own blood and scrawled 2 letters on the floor. The crime scene photos captured it, faint but unmistakable, a final act of defiance from a woman fighting to name her killer. But the investigators missed it, their focus scattered by other suspects and a lack of physical evidence tying Tom to the scene. Tom Brown, a 27-year-old local with a reputation for trouble, had an alibi, friends who claimed he was with them that night. The police questioned him, but his story held, and without forensic technology like DNA analysis, which was years away, they let him walk. The case grew cold, the files tucked away in a drawer at the Monticello Police Department, while Heidi was sent to live with her grandparents, her childhood forever marked by the image of her mother's murder. Heidi grew up carrying the weight of that night. She never forgot what she saw, never stopped telling anyone who would listen that Tom was the man who took her mother away. Her grandparents believed her, but the police didn't, and the years stretched on with no justice. Heidi became a woman, then a mother herself, raising her own children while grappling with the trauma that lingered like a shadow. She'd drive past the old house on South Pine Street sometimes, her heart aching as she remembered her mother's laugh, her gentle hands, the way she'd sing to her before bed. Loretta had been her world, and Tom had stolen that world away. Heidi reached out to the police over the years, her voice growing stronger with each call. But the response was always the same. No new evidence, no reason to reopen the case. She felt like she was shouting into a void, her truth ignored by a system that didn't value a child's testimony. But Heidi wasn't alone in her fight. In 2010, a cold case unit in Arkansas took a fresh look at Loretta's murder. Detective Mike Morrison, a seasoned investigator with a knack for unsolved cases, pulled the dusty file from the archives. He read Heidi's statement from 1977, now yellowed with age, and something about her clarity struck him. She'd been so specific, so consistent, even as a 4-year-old. Morrison tracked her down, now 37, living in Little Rock with her family. Heidi sat across from him, her eyes still carrying the pain of that night, and told the story again. "And I saw Tom Brown kill my mom," she said, her voice steady, the same words she'd spoken decades ago. Morrison listened, then went back to the evidence. He found the crime scene photos buried in a box of negatives, and there they were, the letters T and O, written in Loretta's blood, just as Heidi had always insisted her mother's killer was named. The discovery sent a chill through him. The police had overlooked this for 33 years, dismissing a dying woman's final message and a child's eyewitness account. Morrison and his team dug deeper. Forensic technology had advanced since 1977, and they re-examined the evidence with new tools. Bloodstains on a knife found in a nearby ditch, long thought unrelated, were tested for DNA. The results were inconclusive, but the pattern matched the wounds on Loretta's body. Witnesses from 1977, now older, came forward with stories they'd been too scared to tell. A former friend of Tom's admitted he'd lied about the alibi, saying Tom had pressured him to cover for him. Another neighbor recalled seeing Tom's truck near the Jones home that night, its headlights cutting through the dark. Morrison interviewed Tom, now 67, living quietly in a nearby town. His story had changed over the years, small inconsistencies piling up. He claimed he'd been at a bar, not with friends, and couldn't account for the hours around Loretta's death. The detective pressed him about the letters T and O, watching his face pale as he denied knowing anything about them. In 2023, after years of building the case, prosecutors charged Tom Brown with capital murder. The trial, held in Drew County Courthouse, was a reckoning 46 years in the making. Heidi, now 50, took the stand, her voice clear and unwavering as she recounted what she saw through the peephole. "I was 4, but I knew what I saw," she told the jury, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Tom Brown stabbed my mother and left her to die." The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Laura Warner, presented the crime scene photos, zooming in on the blood-scrawled T and O. "Loretta Jones named her killer," Warner said, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "And her daughter, just a child, told the truth from the start." The defense argued the evidence was circumstantial, pointing to the lack of definitive DNA and the passage of time. They suggested Heidi's memory was unreliable, shaped by trauma and the stories of others. But the jury saw the photos, heard Heidi's unshakable testimony, and listened to the witnesses who'd finally come forward. After 2 days of deliberation, on October 12, 2023, they found Tom Brown guilty. Judge Robert Gibson sentenced him to life without parole, calling the murder a heinous betrayal of a woman who trusted him. Heidi wept as the verdict was read, her grandparents' memory in her heart, knowing they'd be proud of her fight. The Monticello Police Department issued a rare apology, admitting they'd failed to act on Heidi's account and the evidence Loretta left behind. "We didn't listen to a little girl who saw everything," Chief Jason Akers said at a press conference, his head bowed. The case became a touchstone for cold case units nationwide, a reminder to revisit overlooked details and trust the voices of children. Heidi, now a grandmother, found some peace, though the pain of losing her mother never faded. She visited Loretta's grave, placing a single white rose on the headstone, whispering, "We did it, Mama." The letters T and O, written in Loretta's blood, became her silent scream, a beacon of truth that brought her killer to justice. As this sorrow blankets Monticello's quiet streets, another story of bravery unfolds in a distant corner. The night air in Lafayette, Louisiana, was thick with humidity on May 19, 2012, as Michaela Mickey Shunick pedaled her black and gold Schwinn bicycle through the quiet streets. The 21-year-old anthropology senior at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette had spent the evening with friends, laughing and listening to music at a local bar called Atmosphere. She'd returned to her friend Brettley Wilson's house on Ryan Street, but with her brother Zach's high school graduation looming the next morning, she decided to head home just before 2 a.m. Her blonde curls bounced under the streetlights as she rode, her small frame, barely 5'1", 115 pounds, moving steadily toward her family's house on Governor Miro Drive. Mickey was known for her free spirit, her love for animals, and her fierce independence. She always carried a can of mace on her rides, a habit born of caution in a town that felt safe but held its shadow. Unseen in the darkness, a white Chevrolet Z71 pickup truck trailed her, its engine humming softly as it followed her every turn. Behind the wheel was Brandon Scott Levain, a 33-year-old registered sex offender with a history of violence, his eyes locked on Mickey as he drove. Levain had been cruising Lafayette streets that night, his cell phone buzzing as he dialed escort services, his mind set on finding a victim. When he spotted Mickey alone on her bike, he saw an opportunity. He maneuvered his truck closer, matching her pace, waiting for the right moment. Surveillance cameras along St. Landry Street captured the scene at 1:48 a.m. Mickey pedaling west, the white truck looming just behind her. Then, in a sudden lurch, Levain swerved, striking her bike from behind. The impact sent Mickey crashing to the ground. Her bike's rear rim crumpled from the fork. Dazed but alert, she scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding as Levain stepped out of the truck, his presence towering over her. He demanded she get inside, tossing her damaged bike into the truck's bed. Mickey, realizing the danger, reached for her phone to call for help, but Levain was faster. He pulled a knife, its blade catching the faint glow of a street lamp, and threatened her. That's when Mickey fought back. She grabbed her mace, spraying it into his face, the chemical burning his eyes and throat. As he staggered, clawing at his face, she lunged, wresting the knife from his grip. With all her strength, she stabbed him. Once, twice, then again, slicing into his arms, chest and hands, leaving wounds so deep they'd later be called life-threatening. Blood dripped from his hands as he fought back, overpowering her and reclaiming the knife. He stabbed her at least 4 times, her body collapsing onto the pavement, motionless. Levain, panting and bleeding, checked for a pulse and felt nothing. Believing she was dead, he dragged her into his truck and drove off, her bike still in the bed. 40 minutes later, deep in a sugar cane field in North Acadia Parish, Levain pulled over, intending to dump Mickey's body in the darkness. The night was silent, the air heavy with the sweet smell of cane. He opened the truck door, ready to haul her out, when Mickey, still alive, fueled by a desperate will to survive, sprang up, the knife somehow back in her hand. She lunged, stabbing him in the chest, her attack so fierce he stumbled back. Enraged and in pain, Levain pulled a semi-automatic handgun from his waistband and shot her in the head, killing her instantly. Her body slumped to the ground, the fight finally over. Levain, now covered in blood and scratches from her nails raking his skin, drove on, his mind racing. He dumped her bike in the Atchafalaya River beneath the Whiskey Bay Bridge, 25 miles from Lafayette, where it would be found 8 days later. He buried Mickey's body in a wooded area off Louisiana Highway 10 in Evangeline Parish, near a small cemetery with about 30 headstones, covering her with dirt and leaves. Exhausted and wounded, he made his way to a hospital in Jefferson Parish that same night, May 19th. There, he told deputies he'd been stabbed at a gas station, but his story was vague, his demeanor uncooperative. The staff treated his deep cuts, including severed tendons in his hands, and noted the scratches crisscrossing his arms and face. He refused to give details, claiming he couldn't remember where the attack happened, and the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office made no arrest, leaving the incident as a footnote in their records. Levain knew the police were closing in. Surveillance footage from St. Landry Street had captured his white Z71, and on May 25th, Lafayette police released images of the truck to the public, asking for tips. Panicked, Levain drove to San Jacinto County, Texas, on June 14th, where he set his truck ablaze in a remote field, reporting it stolen to cover his track. The burned-out wreck was found that same day, his charred frame raising suspicions when police linked it to the Shunick case. Determined to avoid detection, Levain went to a car dealership in Lafayette to buy a near-identical white Chevy pickup. It was early July, and he arrived for a test drive, his arms and neck still marked with fresh scratches and healing stab wounds. The dealership worker, a sharp-eyed man named John, processed Levain's paperwork and noticed something chilling. His driver's license was marked with a red S for sex offender, a detail that stood out starkly against the backdrop of the Shunick investigation. John's stomach turned as he recalled the police's appeal for information about a white pickup truck seen near where Mickey vanished. He glanced at Levain, noting the scratches that marred his skin, the nervous way he avoided eye contact. When Levain drove off in the new truck, John jotted down his name and license number, then called the Lafayette Police Department's tip line. "I think you need to look at this guy," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "He's got scratches all over him, and he's replacing a white truck." The tip was a turning point. Lafayette police, already investigating Levain after connecting his burned truck to the surveillance footage, moved quickly. On July 5, 2012, state police pulled him over near I-49 and I-10, arresting him on a warrant for failing to register as a sex offender, a charge tied to his 2000 conviction for aggravated oral sexual battery. At the station, Levain clammed up, requesting an attorney and refusing to answer questions. But the evidence was mounting. His burned truck, the hospital report from May 19th, the bike under Whiskey Bay, and now the dealership worker's tip painted a damning picture. Investigators searched his home in Church Point, 30 miles from Lafayette, finding traces of blood and burned remnants of Mickey's book bag and iPod. On July 18th, a grand jury indicted him for first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping in Mickey's case, as well as the 1999 murder of Lisa Pat, a 35-year-old woman he'd suffocated after holding her captive. Mickey's body was still missing, but police believed she was dead. The damage to her bike and Lavagne's wounds telling a story of violence. On August 7th, a credible tip, its source never revealed, led police to the wooded area in Evangeline Parish. They followed a private road past the small cemetery, their flashlights cutting through the dark as they dug up a shallow grave. The body, in advanced decomposition, was Mickey's, confirmed days later by the Lafayette coroner's office using her medical and dental records. The discovery crushed her family, who'd held out hope she was alive, organizing volunteer searches and plastering Lafayette with flyers. Her sister, Charlie, and parents, Tom and Nancy, grieved but found strength in Mickey's courage. "She was a warrior," Charlie said, her voice breaking. "She fought a monster." Levain's trial loomed, with prosecutors vowing to seek the death penalty. But on August 17, 2012, in the Lafayette Parish District Courthouse, he took a plea deal, avoiding execution. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder, Mickey's and Lisa Pate's, in exchange for life without parole. In a chilling court statement, he detailed the attack, admitting how Mickey fought back, macing and stabbing him until he overpowered her. The courtroom was silent as he spoke, the weight of his words sinking in. Judge Louis Perret sentenced him, calling the crimes heinous beyond measure. Mickey's mother, Nancy Rowe, stood outside the courthouse, her voice steady as she spoke to reporters. "My courageous child faced down a monster," she said. She refused to be a victim. The dealership worker's tip, sparked by Levain's scratched-up appearance and sex offender status, had been a key thread in unraveling the case, linking his new truck to the burned one and tying him to the night Mickey vanished. The Lafayette community mourned, but Mickey's legacy endured. Her family created the Mickey Shunick Scholarship Fund, supporting students at U Lafayette, and her story inspired safety initiatives for cyclists. The surveillance footage, the bike under the bridge, and Lavagne's hospital visit became her silent scream, a beacon of truth that brought her killer to justice. As this sorrow blankets Lafayette's quiet streets, another story of bravery unfolds in a distant corner. The air in the Jensen household felt heavy that November in 1998, like a storm brewing just out of sight. Julie Jensen moved through her days with a quiet unease, her heart racing each time she passed her husband, Mark, in their Pleasant Prairie home. The small Wisconsin town, nestled along Lake Michigan's shores, seemed peaceful on the outside. Neat lawns, friendly neighbors, kids playing in the cul-de-sacs. But inside the walls of the Jensen's modest house, something darker simmered. Julie, a devoted mother to their two boys, David and Douglas, couldn't shake the feeling that her husband was hiding something. Their marriage, once a partnership of shared dreams, had frayed over the years. Financial strain gnawed at them. Mark's job as a branch manager for a financial firm in Racine brought in steady money, but their expenses always seemed to outpace it. Whispers of Mark's infidelity added another crack to their fragile bond. Julie had learned about his affair with a coworker, Kelly Labonte, a woman who would later become his second wife. The betrayal stung, but it wasn't just the affair that kept Julie awake at night. It was the way Mark's eyes lingered too long, the way his tone shifted when he thought she wasn't listening, the way he seemed to be planning something she couldn't quite grasp. Julie wasn't one to sit idle. She'd always been sharp, methodical, the kind of person who noticed details others overlooked. So she started watching him. Carefully, quietly, she began piecing together a puzzle she hoped she'd never have to solve. She rifled through his things when he wasn't home, her fingers trembling as she flipped through his daily planner. That's where she found it, a list scrawled in his handwriting, tucked away like a secret. It wasn't a grocery list or a to-do list for work. It was something else, something that made her stomach churn. Names of chemicals, cryptic notes about dosages, words like ethylene glycol that she didn't fully understand, but knew didn't belong in a stockbroker's planner. She took a photo of the page, her hands steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. Later, she sat at the family computer, the glow of the screen casting shadows across her face as she checked the browser history. Mark had been searching for things that didn't add up: poison, antifreeze, ways to make someone sick without leaving a trace. Each click felt like a step closer to a truth she didn't want to face. She started keeping a record, a quiet act of defiance against the growing dread. She jotted down dates, times, observations, every strange behavior, every odd comment Mark made. She didn't tell anyone, not yet. She didn't tell anyone, not yet. Instead, she poured her fears into a letter, her pen moving quickly across the page as if time were running out. "I pray that I am wrong and nothing happens," she wrote, her words steady but urgent. "But I am suspicious of Mark's suspicious behaviors and fear for my early demise." She made it clear she would never take her own life. If something happened to her, if she was found dead, Mark should be the first suspect. She sealed the letter and handed it to a neighbor she trusted, a woman who lived just across the street. "If anything happens to me," Julie said, her voice low but firm. "Give this to the police." The neighbor nodded, sensing the weight of the moment, but not fully understanding it. Julie's boys, David and Douglas, were only 8 and 3, too young to know the storm brewing around them. She wanted to protect them, to shield them from whatever might come. On December 3rd, 1998, the storm broke. Mark called 911, his voice calm but insistent. He'd found Julie in their bed, he said, lifeless under the covers, wearing only a t-shirt and underwear. No visible injuries, no signs of a struggle, just Julie, gone. The paramedics arrived, their boots heavy on the hardwood floor, but there was nothing they could do. She was already cold. The initial autopsy left more questions than answers. The Kenosha County medical examiner couldn't pinpoint the cause of death, not at first. Julie had been sick in the days leading up to her death, Mark told investigators, complaining of headaches and nausea. He painted a picture of a depressed woman, one who might have taken her own life. But something about his story didn't sit right with the lead detective. Mark's demeanor was off, too composed, too detached for a man who'd just lost his wife. And then there was the letter. She handed the letter to the police, and when they opened it, Julie's voice reached out from beyond the grave. It was chilling, a desperate plea for justice written in her neat, deliberate handwriting. She detailed her suspicions, the strange list in Mark's planner, the computer searches for poison. She begged the police to look at her husband, if anything happened to her. The detective read it twice, then a third time, feeling the weight of her words. This wasn't just a grieving widow's paranoia. This was evidence. Investigators dug deeper. They seized the family's computer and found the search history Julie had uncovered. Queries about ethylene glycol, the main ingredient in antifreeze, and its effects on the human body. They learned Mark had been discussing poisoning with a coworker, casually tossing around ideas about how to make someone sick without raising suspicion. A jailhouse informant later claimed Mark had confided in him, admitting he'd given Julie antifreeze, and when that didn't work fast enough, smothered her with a pillow as she struggled to breathe. Toxicological tests confirmed the presence of ethylene glycol in Julie's blood, stomach, and urine. The medical examiner ruled her death a homicide, caused by a lethal combination of antifreeze, poisoning, and asphyxiation. Mark Jensen was arrested in March 2002, charged with first-degree intentional homicide. The case gripped Pleasant Prairie and beyond. Its details splashed across local news and later national true crime shows. The trial, moved to Walworth County due to the intense publicity, began in January 2008. Special Prosecutor Robert Jambois built the case around Julie's letter, calling it her last will and testament. It was a powerful piece of evidence, a voice from the grave that pointed directly at Mark. Jambois argued that Mark had poisoned Julie slowly, slipping antifreeze into her food or drink, then drugged her with sleeping pills to keep her weak. When she didn't die fast enough, he'd smothered her, pressing her face into the pillow as she gasped for air. The motive, Jambois said, was clear. Mark wanted to be with Kelly Levante, his mistress, who he'd later marry, and who would raise his sons after his imprisonment. The defense, led by attorney Craig Albee, told a different story. They painted Julie as a depressed woman, haunted by her own infidelity years earlier, and tormented by anonymous harassment. Pornographic photos left on their cars, hang-up calls she meticulously logged. They claimed she'd framed Mark, writing the letter to ensure he'd pay for his affair, even if she took her own life. The defense pointed to her visits to a therapist, her prescription for Paxil just days before her death, as proof of her fragile mental state. But the jury wasn't convinced. After more than 30 hours of deliberation, they found Mark guilty on February 22, 2008. Judge Bruce Schroeder sentenced him to life without parole, a decision that seemed to close the case. Julie's family, her brothers Paul, Larry, and Michael, felt a measure of relief, believing justice had been served. But the story didn't end there. Mark's attorneys appealed, arguing that Julie's letter violated his Sixth Amendment right to confront his accuser. Since Julie was dead, he couldn't cross-examine her, they said, making the letter's use in court unconstitutional. The legal battle stretched on for years, winding through state and federal courts. In 2013, a federal judge agreed with the defense, overturning Mark's conviction and ordering his release within 90 days unless the state retried him. The Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the decision in 2015, and the case seemed destined for a new trial. But in a surprising twist, Kenosha County Circuit Judge Chad Kirkman ruled in 2017 that the letter was admissible as non-testimonial evidence and reinstated Mark's conviction without a retrial. The defense fought back, and in February 2020, Wisconsin's Court of Appeals reversed Kirkman's decision, ordering a new trial and barring the use of Julie's letter and voicemails she'd left for police. The second trial began on January 9, 2023, before Judge Anthony Milasoskas. Without the letter, prosecutors leaned heavily on other evidence. They presented Mark's internet searches, his emails to Kelly Labonte, and testimony from a co-worker who recalled Mark joking about poisoning his wife. Another witness, a former colleague, described a chilling conversation from a month before Julie's death, where Mark had mused about ways to kill a spouse. The jailhouse informant's testimony resurfaced, detailing Mark's alleged confession. Julie's friends and family testified to her devotion as a mother, refuting the defense's claim that she'd abandoned her boys by taking her own life. She lived for her kids, Deputy District Attorney Carly McNeil told the jury, her voice steady. She didn't frame her husband. She died because he murdered her. The defense held firm, insisting Julie's death was a suicide meant to punish Mark. They pointed to her therapy sessions, her antidepressant prescription, and the absence of the letter as proof the case was weaker this time. But the jury didn't buy it. After just one day of deliberation, they convicted Mark again on February 1st, 2023, of first-degree intentional homicide. On April 14th, Judge Milasoskas sentenced him to life without parole, calling the crime a ghastly act of torture. Julie's brothers spoke at the sentencing, their voices breaking as they asked for the maximum penalty. He could have divorced her, the judge said, his tone heavy with disgust. Instead, he chose to torture her for a long time. Mark, now 63, maintained his innocence, asking for parole eligibility to help his aging parents and reconnect with his son. David, his eldest, testified in his defense, describing a tearful moment when Mark found Julie dead. But the judge wasn't swayed. The evidence, he said, was overwhelming. Prosecutors, led by Jambois, expressed confidence that this conviction would stick, though Mark vowed to appeal again. The case, now spanning nearly a quarter century, had left its mark. not just on the Jensen family, but on the legal system, setting precedents about evidence like Julie's letter and the rights of defendants. As the courtroom emptied, the weight of Julie's words lingered. Her letter, though barred from the second trial, had set this chain of events in motion, ensuring her voice was heard even after her death. Julie's letter, tucked into an envelope and entrusted to a neighbor, became her silent scream, a beacon of truth that brought her killer to justice. As this sorrow blankets Pleasant Prairie's quiet streets, another story of bravery unfolds in a distant corner. The sun rose slow over Lucin, Utah on May 28, 2022, painting the desert in hues of gold and crimson, the air sharp with the scent of sagebrush and dry earth. Dylan Rounds, just 19, born April 10, 2003, stretched in his cramped camper trailer, parked on his 640-acre farm, a patchwork of dreams he'd carved out in this nowhere town, 200 miles from Salt Lake City. His sandy hair stuck out beneath a faded red cap, his blue jeans worn at the knees, hands rough from 2 summers of tearing up sagebrush to plant grain, the green tips now poking through cracked soil. The camper smelled of instant coffee and motor oil. A single photo of his family in Idaho falls tacked to the wall, his life simple but purposeful. A young man born to farm, not to chase city lights or video games. By 7:00 a.m., he sipped coffee, the generator humming outside, and called his grandmother, Ellen Rounds, 72, born 1950. Her voice warmed through the phone. "It's gonna rain, Grandma." "I'm moving the grain truck to the shed," he said, his voice steady, eyes scanning the gray clouds rolling in. The shed, a rusted metal barn 5 miles off, sat on a neighbor's land where James Brenner, 60, born March 30, 1962, a short, wiry man with a gray beard and hard eyes, squatted in a beat-up trailer, his presence a thorn in Dylan's side. Dylan climbed into his 2015 Ford F-150, the bed loaded with tools, dust swirling as he drove across the uneven terrain, sagebrush scraping the tires. The shed loomed ahead, its corrugated walls streaked with rust, the air inside heavy with the smell of old hay and grease. Brenner was there, hunched over a .22 caliber rifle, cleaning it with a rag, his hands stained with oil, his 5 4-frame tents. Dylan parked, the engine ticking as it cooled, and stepped out, his boots crunching gravel. "You gotta stop siphoning my diesel, James," he said, voice firm but calm, his breath visible in the chilly morning. Brenner, a drifter with a rap sheet, malicious wounding in Maryland, 1985, illegal gun possession in 2001, had worked for Dylan last summer, hauling hay, but their bond frayed when Dylan caught him stealing fuel. But a betrayal that stung deep in this isolated place. "Nice." Brenner's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on the rifle, but he muttered, "Ain't done nothing." Dylan shook his head, turning to leave, his boots kicking up dust, unaware of the rage simmering behind him. At 9:12 a.m., as Dylan reached for his phone to check the weather, Brenner grabbed a shovel, leaning against the shed, his blade dull but heavy. He swung hard, the metal cracking against Dylan's skull, blood spraying across the dirt, a crimson arc that soaked the earth. Dylan stumbled, his vision blurring, blood matting his sandy hair, his phone slipping from his hand, the camera app triggered by accident, recording as it hit the ground. The video captured Brenner, blood splattered on his gray shirt and arms, standing over Dylan, his face twisted, muttering, "You shouldn't have crossed me." Dylan's body slumped, his breath shallow, blood pooling beneath him. His eyes half open, life fading fast. Brenner, panting, dropped the shovel, the clatter echoing in the empty shed, and wiped his hands, smearing blood on his jeans, the rifle still clutched tight. By 9:30 a.m., Brenner dragged Dylan's body across the desert, blood trailing in the dirt, to a shallow grave 200 yards away, the ground hard, his hands blistered as he dug, sweat mixing with the blood on his face. He stripped Dylan's boots, one stained red, and tossed them near a dirt mound, the laces loose, blood drying in the sun's heat. Dylan's phone, its screen cracked, was hurled into Lucin Pond, a murky pool a mile off, sinking with a faint splash, blood smearing its case. Brenner returned to the shed, climbed into Dylan's truck, his short legs pushing the seat forward, and drove to a car wash in Montello, Nevada, 30 miles west. At 10:15 a.m., he sprayed the truck clean, water running red, blood traces lingering on the gear shift, a smudge he missed on the door. He parked it back in the shed, locking it, the key fob tucked in his pocket, blood wiped from the handle, but not perfectly. Candace Cooley, Dylan's mother, 45, born 1977, called his phone at 3:00 p.m. from Idaho Falls, her heart sinking when it went to voicemail. Dylan always answered, his voice a constant in her day. By May 30th, she drove 300 miles to Lucin, her pickup, rattling over the desert roads, finding the camper empty. No wallet, no pistol, the bed unmade, coffee cold in a mug. Panic rose in her chest, and she called the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office at 5:00 p.m., her voice breaking. "My son's gone." Deputy Cade Palmer, 38, born 1984, arrived at 6:30 p.m., leading a search with 20 volunteers. Arrived at 6:30 p.m., leading a search with 20 volunteers. Canines sniffing the air, drones humming overhead. At 7:45 p.m., they found Dylan's boots, one bloodstained, near the shed. Brenner's trailer nearby, its door locked, the faint smell of gunpowder seeping out. The truck, in the shed, gleamed too clean, the driver's seat pushed forward, odd for Dylan's 6'1" frame, a speck of blood on the floor mat. On June 16th, Palmer searched Brenner's trailer, finding black powder, ignition caps, and a muzzleloader, illegal for a felon like Brenner. A neighbor, David Holt, 55, born 1967, told the FBI on June 20 that Brenner handed him 3 black powder guns and 22 rifle days after Dylan vanished, saying, "Keep these safe. Cops are coming." Holt, uneasy, turned them over. Blood, faint on one barrel. On June 21st, the FBI arrested Brenner on firearm charges, his hands cuffed, eyes cold, denying any link to Dylan. On July 7th, divers pulled Dylan's phone from Lucin Pond, its case slimy, blood traces on the edges. Forensic tech Sarah Kim, 30, born 1992, recovered a 30-second video, timestamped 9:12 a.m., May 28, showing Brenner, blood on his arms and shirt, cleaning the rifle, Dylan's body blurred in the frame, blood pooling. Kim tested Brenner's shirt, found in the trailer, confirming Dylan's DNA, blood tying them together. The case turned homicide by October 2022. Palmer's team scouring 10 square miles, the desert hiding its secrets in caves and mine shacks. Candace, at a March 2023 press conference, held Dylan's photo, tears falling. His phone told us the truth, the blood in the video haunting her. On March 3, 2023, Brenner was charged, with aggravated murder and abuse of a human body. Pleading not guilty, his lawyer, Mark Richards, 50, born 1973, arguing not taste the blood, not enough. The boots, with Dylan's and Brenner's DNA, sat in evidence, blood crusted on the leather. Candace raised $100,000 for searches, telling KSL, Brenner killed my son. His blood's on that shirt. On April 9, 2024, Brenner, facing life, took a plea deal, leading deputies to Dylan's remains, skeletal, buried in the desert. A bullet hole in the skull, blood long gone, but bones speaking volume. The FBI recovered them. Medical examiner Dr. Emily Chen, 40, born 1984, confirming Dylan's identity via dental records. The gunshot wound clear. Brenner pleaded guilty to second-degree murder on May 15, 2024, in Brigham City's 1st District Court. Judge Brandon Maynard, 55, born 1970, presiding. Prosecutor Stephen Hadfield, 48, born 1976, played the video Brenner's bloodstained arms undeniable. Dylan's phone the key. Brenner, silent, faced 3 to 30 years, sentenced July 1st, 2024. Candace sobbing, 15 years for murder. Isn't justice, blood etched in her mind. The plea dropped a desecration charge. Brenner's face blank, his shirt in evidence, blood binding him to Dylan. The funeral came on July 10, 2024, in Idaho Falls. 200 mourners filling a church that smelled of lilies and earth. Dylan's coffin draped in a flannel like his. Candace launched Dylan's Legacy, a nonprofit for missing persons, her hands trembling, blood memories lingering. X posts surged. Dylan rounds trending with 75,000 likes. Users sharing the video's horror, red candle emojis for his blood. The farm stood silent, grain unharvested. The shed locked, blood stains faded but there. The Salt Lake Tribune called it a desert's dark secret. Loosen's quiet heavy, Dylan's boots at a vigil, blood a testament to his final fight. Dylan's phone, its blood-soaked video, spoke for him, delivering justice from the grave with a truth that could not be buried. As this grief scars the sands of Lucin, another shadow stirs in a distant valley. The afternoon sun hung low over Delphi, Indiana, on February 13, 2017, casting a warm golden glow across the Monon High Bridge Trail, where the air carried the faint scent of pine and damp earth. Liberty Libby German, 14, born December 27, 2002, and Abigail Abby Williams, 13, born June 23, 2003, best friends with matching grins, walked side by side, their sneakers scuffing the gravel path. Libby, with her dark blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, wore a gray Delphi swimming sweatshirt and jeans, her phone tucked in her pocket, a Harry Potter-themed case protecting it. Abby, her brown hair loose under a knit cap, had on a borrowed jacket, her laughter echoing as they crossed the old railroad bridge, its rusted beams creaking under their steps, the Deer Creek glittering 60 feet below. It was a snow makeup day, school canceled, and the girls, dropped off by Libby's older sister Kelsey German, 20, born 1997, at 1:30 p.m., planned to spend the afternoon exploring, snapping photos, and soaking in the freedom of a crisp winter day. Libby pulled out her phone at 2:07 p.m., posting a Snapchat of Abby on the bridge, her smile bright, the sky behind her a soft blue. The trail was quiet, just the rustle of leaves and the distant chirp of birds. But as they reached the far end of the bridge, Libby noticed a man trailing behind, his figure hazy in the distance, dressed in blue jeans, a dark jacket, and a cap pulled low. Her gut tightened, and at 2:13 p.m., she started recording, her phone capturing the man, later called Bridge Guy, as he walked closer, his steps heavy, his voice low and chilling, saying, "Guys, guy." Down the hill, the 43-second clip caught his grainy image, his words sharp, the girls' voices faint, one saying, "There's no path. The trail ends here, so we have to go down." Fear crept into Libby's chest, but she kept the phone recording, tucking it under her sweatshirt, her hands shaking as they descended the steep, wooded slope toward the creek, the man's shadow looming. By 2:32 p.m., the Apple Health app on Libby's phone logged its last movement, the device now still beneath Abby's body, hidden in the woods half a mile from the bridge. Richard Allen, 50, born September 15, 1967. A local CVS pharmacy technician with a slight build and glasses, had followed them, his .40 caliber SIG, Sauer pistol in hand, according to court filings. Allen, married with a daughter, had no criminal record, but admitted later to being on the trail that day, his voice matching the clip prosecutors claim. Down the hill, in a clearing near a tree, he forced the girls to stop, his gun raised, his face hard. Libby's throat was slashed first, her blood soaking the ground, mixing with tears, a transfer stain later found on a tree, her body dragged 20 feet to where she was found, naked, blood pooling around. Abby, likely restrained or unconscious, had her throat cut next, her body left clothed in Libby's sweatshirt and jeans, sticks arranged over both girls, an attempt at concealment. Leaves and dirt sticking to Libby's back. When police lifted her, the girls were due to be picked up at 3:15 p.m., but when they didn't show, Kelsey called Libby's phone. No answer, the line dead. By 5:00 p.m., panic set in, and Libby's grandmother, Becky Patty, 65, born 1952, called the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, her voice trembling. "They're missing." Volunteers combing the trails, flashlights cutting through the dusk, the air growing cold. On February 14th, at 12:15 p.m., a searcher found the girls' bodies near Deer Creek, a large pool of blood between them. Libby's phone beneath Abby, its battery dead at 10:32 p.m. the previous night, but reactivating briefly at 4:33 a.m. When texts flooded in, including Becky's, "You need to call me now." Crime scene investigator Brian O'Leary, 42, born 1975, noted the sticks, the blood, and a .40 caliber unspent round near the bodies, later linked to Allen's gun. The video, recovered from Libby's phone, became the case's heart, released days later by Indiana State Police. The grainy image of Bridge Guy and his chilling down the hill, sparking 30,000 tips. Forensic examiner Jeremy Chapman, 38, born 1979, enhanced the clip, pulling 3 frames of the man's face, shared publicly, while the full 43 seconds stayed with jurors. Libby's family clung to her bravery, her quick thinking to record, the phone hidden from Allen, preserving the evidence. By 2019, police released a new sketch. The suspect, aged 18 to 40, possibly local, Superintendent Doug Carter, 55, born 1962, saying, "We believe you're hiding in plain sight. The town of 3,000 Trio. The town of 3,000 Trio. Flowers piling up at the bridge. The girls' photos at police headquarters. Their smiles haunting. In 2021, police chased a lead on a fake Snapchat profile, Anthony Shots, used to lure young girls, but it led nowhere. The case grew cold. Abby and Libby's Memorial Park, rising a mile north, funded by the L in a Park Foundation, their names carved into the school library. Then, in October 2022, a volunteer, Kathy Shank, 48, born 1974, found a mislabeled tip from 2017 naming Alan, who'd admitted to being on the trail, his clothing matching the video. On October 26, 2022, Alan was arrested, charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of felony murder while kidnapping his wife, Kathy Allen, 48, born 1974, stunned, saying he's not a monster. At trial, he's not a monster at trial. Prosecutors leaned on the video, the bullet, and Allen's confessions. Dozens made in prison to his psychologist, Dr. Monica Walla, 40, born 1977, detailing his plan to rape the girls, but fleeing after seeing a van owned by Brad Weber, 45, born 1972, driving nearby at 2:30 p.m. Allen's defense, led by Brad Rossi, 50, born 1973, claimed he was mentally fragile. His confessions coerced after solitary confinement and pushed an Odinism theory, alleging a pagan cult staged the bodies, pointing to the sticks and a supposed rune on a tree. Special Judge Fran Gall, 60, born 1957, blocked this, citing no evidence, calling it fanciful. Forensic scientist Jennifer Mosinowski, 35, born 1982, testified a hair in Abby's hand matched Kelsey's DNA, not Allen's, and no DNA tied him directly. Yet, Major Patrick Cicero, 42, born 1975, described Libby's blood mixed with tears, her body dragged, Abby's hands clean, suggesting restraint. On November 11, 2024, after 18 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Allen on all counts. Gasps and sobs filling the courtroom. Libby's mother, Carrie German Timmons, 40, born 1977, hugging prosecutor Nicholas McClelland, 45, born 1972. On December 20th, 2024, Judge Gull sentenced Allen to 130 years, calling the case heinous, the family's pain generational. Allen, in an orange jumpsuit, showed no reaction, his family absent, while Becky Patty spoke of Libby's courage. Becky Patty spoke of Libby's courage, saying she recorded him, knowing something was wrong. The community mourned. The bridge now a memorial, flowers fading. X posts with #Delphi Murders trending. 50,000 likes. Users praising Libby's video. Red heart. Emojis for the girls' bravery. The park grew, a softball field in their honor. The library renamed. Their legacy endured. Libby's phone, its haunting video of bridge guy, captured a killer's shadow, guiding justice to Abby and Libby long after their voices fell silent. As this tragedy lingers over Delphi's quiet trails, another mystery unfolds in a distant town. The sun hung heavy over Northport, Florida, on January 17, 2008, its rays cutting through the humid air, filling the quiet streets of Latour Avenue with the scent of fresh-cut grass and distant salt water. Denise Amber Lee, 21st, born August 6, 1986, stood on her back porch, her long brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail, a pair of scissors glinting in her hand as she snipped at the curls of her 2-year-old son, Noah, born 2006. Her 6-month-old Adam, born July 2007, slept soundly in his crib inside their rented home, the soft whir of a fan breaking the stillness. Denise wore her husband Nathan's oversized boxer shorts and a faded tank top, her heart-shaped ring, which was a $40 gift from Nathan Lee, 23, born 1985, for their first Valentine's Day. The ring was catching the light as she smiled at Noah's. Earlier, at 11:09 a.m., Nathan, a cable installer juggling 3 jobs, had called from his lunch break. His voice warmed through the phone, suggesting she open the windows to ease the stuffy heat. She'd done so, letting a breeze sweep through, unaware of a green Chevy Camaro prowling her street. Its driver, Michael Lee King, 36, born May 4th, 1971, watching her every move. King, a plumber unemployed for months, his Northport home teetering on foreclosure, gripped the Camaro's wheel, his knuckles pale, his mind clouded by a childhood brain injury from a sledding accident, a divot in his skull, his sister would later say, and a low IQ that left him impulsive. His marriage had collapsed, his ex-wife long gone, and his dark eyes locked on Denise as she moved on the porch. At 2:30 p.m., neighbor Jennifer Eckert, 40, born 1968, glanced through her blinds, noticing the Camaro circle 4 times, its paint gleaming under the sun. She stepped outside, saw it parked in Denise's driveway, a man inside, and assumed he was lost. Minutes later, it vanished. Inside the house, King had slipped through an unlatched window, his boots leaving faint mud streaks on the tile, a roll of duct tape and a .22 caliber revolver tucked in his jacket. Denise, hearing a creak, scooped Noah and Adam into one crib, whispering, "Stay quiet, babies," her pulse quickening as she sensed danger. She lunged for the front door to lock it, but King was there, his 5'10" frame filling the doorway, his voice low and menacing. "Don't scream or I'll shoot." By 2:45 p.m., King had bound Denise's wrists with duct tape, the adhesive biting her skin, her heart-shaped ring pressing into her finger as he forced her into the Camaro's back seat, her eyes darting back to her boy's window, praying they'd be safe. The car peeled away, rattling over Northport's sleepy streets. Denise's phone and purse left abandoned on a chair, the house now still, windows shut. Nathan pulled into the driveway at 3:30 p.m., his heart sinking at the eerie quiet. He found Noah and Adam in one crib, unharmed but alone, Denise's belongings untouched. He dialed her phone 8 times, each call unanswered, then called 911 at 3:45 p.m., his voice breaking, "My wife's gone? Someone took her." He reached out to his father-in-law, Sergeant Rick Goff, 50, born 1958, with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, who rallied 300 officers, helicopters, and K-9s within half an hour, the sky humming with urgency as the search began. At 5:30 p.m., King pulled into the driveway of his cousin, Harold Muxlow, 45, born 1963, 3 miles away, the Camaro's engine idling as he asked for a shovel, a gas can, and a flashlight, claiming his lawnmower was stuck in a ditch. Harold stepped outside, catching sight of Denise in the back seat, her wrists taped, her eyes wide with fear, her voice a desperate hiss. Call the cops. She tried to run, her bare feet hitting the pavement, but King shoved her back. His grip bruising her arm, leaving red marks. Harold, frozen, asked, "What's going on?" King muttered. "Mind your business," and sped off. Harold, uneasy, drove to King's house, found no lawnmower, and called 911 anonymously at 6:00 p.m., his voice shaky, reporting a woman in distress in a green Camaro. "I saw something bad." At 6:14 p.m., Denise, her wrists raw from struggling, spotted King's prepaid cell phone on the front seat while he stepped out at a gas station, the pump humming as he paid. Her hands trembling, she grabbed it, dialed 911, and whispered, "My name's Denise. I'm married. I just want to see my kids." She faked a conversation with King, saying, "I don't have your phone," as dispatcher Cheryl Brunner, 35, born 1973, asked, "Where are you? Are you blindfolded?" Denise, unable to pinpoint her location, pleaded, "Please, God, protect me," her voice cracking, the word "please" spilling from her lips 17 times in 6 minutes. King returned, saw the phone, and ripped out its battery, his face flushed with rage, snarling, "You'll pay for that." The call, untraceable due to the prepaid phone, gave police King's name, tying it to the Camaro's registration. At 6:30 p.m., Jane Kowalski, 42, born 1966, a Tampa computer consultant, stopped at a light on U.S. Route 41, her windows down, hearing screams from the Camaro beside her. She saw Denise's hand banging the window, leaving a palm print later recovered by forensics. Kowalski called 911, her voice urgent, there's screaming. "It's a woman, not a kid," describing the green Camaro and the cross streets. Charlotte County dispatcher Millie Stepp, 38, born 1970, failed to relay the location to deputies, 4 of whom were within a mile, 1 patrolling Toledo Blade. Kowalski stayed on the line 9 minutes, her call misrouted across county lines, the critical details lost in a bureaucratic fumble. King drove to his squat ranch house on Sardinia Avenue, the air inside stale with cigarette smoke and mildew. There, he raped Denise, her wrists still bound, her body bruising as she fought, defensive wounds marking her arm. In a fleeting moment of defiance, she pulled strands of her own hair, tucking them under the back seat, and slipped off her heart-shaped ring, wedging it deep between the cushions, her fingers trembling, knowing it might be her only trait. By 7:00 p.m., King drove to an abandoned construction site off Plantation Boulevard, the Camaro's tires crunching gravel, a muddy shovel in the trunk. Denise, unbound but weak, saw the .22 caliber revolver as he raised it, pressing the barrel above her left eyebrow. The shot echoed at 7:15 p.m., blood and ocular fluid spraying the car's interior, her body slumping, still alive as blood filled her lungs, her breathing shallow. King dragged her to a shallow grave, 3 feet deep, and buried her, mud caking his boots, her boxer shorts tossed 200 yards away, semen later matching his DNA. At 9:30 p.m., State Trooper Edward Pope, 40, born 1968, pulled over the Camaro 6 miles from Kowalski's sighting, spotting King, wet from the waist down, mud on his boots, a camouflage shirt stained with blood. In his pocket was the prepaid phone, battery removed. In the car, a gas can, shovel, and Denise's heart-shaped ring, her hair on the spoiler with dried blood pellets. King claimed he was hijacked, denying everything, but Pope arrested him for kidnapping. On January 19, 2008, a searcher found Denise's body in the grave, naked, a gunshot wound to the head, bruises on her wrists, blood in her lungs. Blood in her lungs? Medical examiner, Dr. Daniel Schultz, 50, born 1958, confirmed rape and defensive wounds, her hair and ring tying her to the Camaro, DNA from the boxer shorts sealing the case. On August 28, 2009, in Sarasota County Court, Judge Deno Economou, 60, born 1948, presided over King's trial. Prosecutors, Lon Aaron, 45, born 1963, and Karen Fragolade, 42, born 1966, played Denise's 911 call, her desperate pleas, "I just want to see my family," piercing the courtroom, jurors wiping tears. The heart-shaped ring, her hair, the palm print, and DNA from the boxer shorts built an ironclad case. Harold Muxlow testified, his head bowed, admitting he saw Denise but hesitated to act. Kowalski, her voice breaking, said, "I tried to save her." Defense attorney Carolyn Schlemmer, 50, born 1958, argued no murder weapon was found, suggesting another shooter, but the evidence crushed her claims. The jury deliberated 2 hours, convicting King of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and sexual battery. On September 4, 2009, Economou sentenced him to death, his voice grave. Her terror is unimaginable. King, showing no emotion, now confined to death row at Union Correctional Institution. Nathan, raising Noah and Adam alone, founded the Denise Amber Lee Foundation, channeling his grief into 911 reform. He and Rick Goff lobbied for the Denise Amber Lee Act, passed unanimously on April 24, 2008, mandating voluntary 911 training, later pushing for mandatory standards. A 2012 lawsuit against Charlotte County settled for $750,000, the dispatcher's failure costing Denise's life. X posts with #DeniseAmberLee surged to 20,000 likes, users sharing her 911 call, praising her courage, red rose emojis honoring her ring. Nathan on Dr. Phil in 2010, choked up, "She left that ring for me." Northport rally, a memorial rising at the local library, the ring's image on foundation shirts, her legacy etched in law and heart. Denise's heart-shaped ring, tucked into the Camaro's backseat, became her silent scream, a beacon of truth that brought her killer to justice. As this sorrow blankets Northport's quiet streets, another story of bravery unfolds in a distant corner.